This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, great. So welcome to the November 30th, 2022 meeting of the Community Relations Committee. We'd like to thank Easthampton Media for posting our recordings on YouTube. All past meetings of the CRC can be found on Easthampton Media's YouTube account for viewing at any time. For the benefit of those joining us from the community, I'd like to start this meeting by sharing our committee's mission statement, which is to promote positive relations throughout Easthampton's diverse population. We'll work to build a sense of inclusion, community, and pride where community members feel welcome, accepted, and valued. So first we'll do roll call. Please verbally acknowledge your presence. Rebecca Pasa.
Here.
Myra Oyedemi. Margaret Kirstein. Jan Norman. Marla Solomon.
Here.
And Emily Britton, that's me. Thank you. So the top of our agenda, let's see, we've got public speak. I noticed that we've got someone visiting, and I wondered if she wanted to speak with us tonight.
No, I'm all set, but thank you for asking.
Okay, great. Okay, well, if anyone else comes on, I will, depending upon when they come on, I will pause and let them know when public speak can happen. I understand that people can't always log on right at the beginning. So we're switching our agenda order a little bit. We wanted to talk with the mayor and let her know about our current state and also share some of our progress. So I wrote it up in a PowerPoint so that it could be in front of us visually. And I got help from Rebecca and Marla, and I didn't have a chance to get help from Margaret, but I'm sure she would have contributed if she could.
No, I couldn't have, because I'm pregnant and barefoot in the kitchen.
Oh, that did startle me for a second there. Yeah.
That did.
Okay. So let's see. Hold on just a second. Where is my PDF? Here it is. Okay. So I'm going to share it. There it is. Okay. So at the top. Whoop, okay.
Emily, can I just ask you a quick question before you start? Did you integrate the slides?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yours are in there. Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So here we are. So just quick reminders here. This committee was born in response to the City Spirit meeting that occurred on June 20th. And it was facilitated by the Community Relations Service of the U.S. Department of Justice. And there were brainstorming sessions which involved the community, residents, and leaders. And they produced many possible and well-conceived solutions for what they saw to be our issues. And they identified our issues as this list. So lack of community engagement due to barriers and accessibility, lack of avenues to engage community members in crucial conversations, perception of new versus old residents being divided, perception that affordable housing was only for low-income individuals, and a lack of a common definition for what that meant, racism, ethnocentrism, anti-immigration sentiment, and us versus them, and unconscious bias, income inequality, high cost of living. And then there was one more element that received only 4 votes. It looks like they moved it up because it ended up being retained. And it was an unwelcoming environment for LGBT and gender nonconforming individuals.
Mhm.
So out of that spirit report, the CRC was sort of proposed. And that was on July 11th. There was a vote by the city council, and there were going to be 11 members. So, and some of us are still standing, which is great. So the first meeting was on March 30th, 2019, and there were 10 members. I thought there were 11 members, but Rebecca corrected me, there were 10. And then we had a liaison who was our police liaison, Dennis Scribner, I believe was his name. So that's the list of people who were here. And we had the spirit report with us. And it's been at our fingertips ever since, if people kept it in their binders, if they kept their binders. Yet, for a variety of reasons, as many of us know, tangible work was and has been slow going. So we did write a mission and a vision statement. I just read those earlier, actually, and these were our decided missions and vision statements, which, as you can see, they're a little bit big or general, but they're certainly not out of sync with what the city spirit suggestions were. They were totally in sync with it. They're just rather big. So we got a lot of professional assistance, I would say. Brian Core was very willing to help us in the beginning. He came from Cambridge. He was the executive director of the Cambridge Peace Commission, and thanks to Mayor LaChapelle for putting us in touch with him. Also an organization for civilian oversight of law enforcement. And then we also received consultation from Mildred Dupre de Robles from the Department of Justice, and then Derek Dean also from the Department of Justice. And then in separate groups, we also interviewed a number of facilitators for anti-racism and peace building. And I myself served on 2 forum subcommittees, which had different memberships due to the changing memberships. And yeah, unfortunately, to my huge dismay, we never did alight upon 1 or even 2 trainers. The group never did decide to go for it for a variety of reasons. So let's see. So I just labeled this slide, why not even a forum? Like, why did this happen, right? So, we could say that, there's been hampered follow through, which has plagued this committee. It's appeared that fluctuating membership and inconsistent attendance may have been one fault. And then the restrictions of the open meeting law. And it could have created this vicious circle that looks like this. So I've got it written out there, fluctuating.
The only thing that's missing is COVID.
Oh, right.
COVID is the only thing.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, not a great help either.
Oh my God, you're right. I should
Because
know that.
within the first
Right.
year, we never saw each other again.
Yeah.
We didn't meet for many months, like probably March, April, May, June of 2020. We probably never met at all.
Right.
Like
Right.
that. Okay, so
Yep.
COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I can't believe I forgot that.
we're all trying to ignore it now.
Right.
Typical.
So anyway, like fluctuating, with the changing membership, it causes like different interests, different biases. There can be lack of agreement, then there can be stagnation. No one knows what to do. Then it can lead to low morale and then poor attendance, and around we go. So that's how I was looking at it. But I must admit that after examining the attendance carefully, and I can show that to you, except I'd have to stop. I can show that later, maybe. I have to stop this. We really, like many times, especially in 2021, we actually had very good attendance. So when I looked at that, Rebecca, do you think I should show that really quickly?
Well, I think if it's easier for you to go through this, we could certainly look
Yeah,
at it
yeah.
afterwards, or
Right.
having spoken of it, email it to everybody.
Right. Okay.
It would be a public document now.
Yeah.
Okay.
We trust you here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I really was less convinced that the above vicious circle was really a valid excuse. So a method to test this hypothesis was to create a survey, and we did that in 2022. Myself and Rebecca did it actually, and we had 6 responders. There could have been 10 because I believe we have lost 10 members, whether they formally resigned or not. We did send it to the people who had not yet really sent in letters of resignation yet. So anyway, we only got 6 responses, but these were their replies. Frustration with the lack of productivity, personal reasons, which could include seeing that there was a lot of extra work that would need to be done and they just didn't have the time. Confusion or lack of clarity about the mission. Discomfort with other members, discomfort with the public exposure. One person moved, and then a submitted response was they felt there was a lack of trust, respect, and collaboration among the members, which they did try to work through. Luckily, 0% said disagreement with the mission or the plan strategy. So at least there was respect for the mission and the strategies which were still not entirely clear sometimes. So anyway, out of those six, 2 people rated personal reasons as their chief reason for resigning. And then each other reason was listed as a chief reason. And then we asked if any of them would be interested in returning to the CRC, and only 1 said they would be interested. Free-form comments were, one of them was frustration with the way new members were vetted, causing a divisive committee, and another member cited the need to have positive relations within the group before it can work outside of itself in the community. So correlations, but not necessarily conclusions to all of that was, like, again, at least none of the responders disagreed with the mission. And frustration with the process, open meeting law, the whole bit, discomfort between members, and possible awareness of the amount of work needing to get things done were the chief reasons. And then another possible correlation is that the process, as usual, is just not well suited for this work, or this work is not well suited for the process. So those are things that I'm thinking about. And I'm sure we've all been thinking about them. So Derek Dean, met with us 7 times, just quite a lot. He was from the Community Relations Service, which helps groups like us around the country. And at the end, near the end of those sessions, he offered an anonymous poll to all of us to determine the priorities of the 13 recommendations, which had come out of all these groups, like the Mayor's Pledge to Reimagine Policing, the Blueprint Easthampton, and the CRC's founding ordinance. And the following goals were given the highest priority by only 7 members who responded. I don't know, Rebecca might.
Emily?
Yeah.
Can I ask a real quick question there? Do you know how many people were members? How many members we had at that point?
8.
At that time, I know.
8.
8.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, Derek.
Excuse me, there were 2 people who did not fill out. One was
Well,
one of our co-chairs, and one was another member. There were two people who did not fill out after we went through all the strategic planning. Two people never filled out what they believed, just what they thought would be the most important and the second most important, et cetera.
Okay.
Never say never.
Which-
Actually, Derek extended the deadline. So what we found was that there were 4 responders. He extended the deadline, and then finally there were 7 out of 8.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
But,
Thank you.
but
That's
I understand
helpful.
what you're saying, Margaret. I understand.
Is that to me was a telling sign that people were not invested if they couldn't even, we were given several weeks, if not a month, to, and people just couldn't even do that part.
Yeah.
So
It was disappointing. Yeah. Okay. So the goals. So again, like when membership was a little different. So it's not the goals of our current group because we've lost a number of people, but the goals then were these 5, as you can see. So I don't need to read them for you, but engage residents and businesses, foster education, the whole bit. And the last one was promote strong neighborhoods and community connections. So then in February of 2022, Myra and I stood at the table at Winterfest and asked people to fill out a survey of their needs and interests in the community. And just anecdotally, I would say that a number of the people were of color, which was nice to see. It was like Winterfest was popular among many different people, which was great. So Marla compiled the results of that survey, and if this is the first slide you'd like to show, Marla, is that right?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things from that survey that seem relevant to the conversation today, and just trying to get a sense of, what support there is in the community as far as we know for the different objectives that we might pursue now. So again, this was first compiled in July because after the February, I think you had it out for a while people could fill it out online as well. So this was first compiled in July, and then just before this meeting kind of looked at it again and reframed a few things. But a couple of selected responses. This one was a scale to what extent people agreed with the statement that Easthampton is a welcoming city. And to me, this was important to show just because, 14 out of the 30 responses are sort of smack dab in the middle and not a particularly strong feeling one way or the other that it's a very welcoming place or not, but just kind of a little bit of sense of uncertainty. How welcoming is it? So that's something that, maybe we want to explore a little bit more. Do you want to go to the next one? Do you want me to continue? Okay. So then the other question that we had asked was, which of the CRC's strategic plan priorities do you most support? And this was, they were given the 5 that Emily just showed and asked to select one that they thought was the most important. And they could also list other. And unfortunately on the slide, it doesn't come out very clearly what they were, unless, did you include
let's see,
the details on the next one? Yeah, there we go. So these were actually the response options that they had. The promote strong neighborhoods and community connections was the strongest one. It got 30%. Next one was promote educational opportunities having to do with community relations. For example, undoing racism, that had like about 26%. Enlist the cooperation of other government agencies, etc. 13%. And I put in a number of responses too, given we just were dealing with 30 responses. So it wasn't a lot of people, but, and then foster through education and public information, the awareness of community relations, but maybe even more important in this one is just a general understanding of city operations and how that works. One person, excuse me, voted for that. And then, yeah, engage residents and businesses through developing or supporting programs, events, and projects that support the committee's purpose. That was 10%. And then I listed here some of the other responses that people had said, primarily because there were a couple of specific comments. Again, this was just one person each that said these things, but there were a couple of specific comments about the Undoing Racism trainings. And since we know that there's been an important investment in those trainings by the mayor and the city, that, you know, we wanted to kind of just highlight that. Again, it's just a couple of people, but it's still there. So to kind of get a sense of what are people that have responded to this survey expecting of this committee, how do they see it, its identity, and, you know, what do they think we should be doing? And I have some kind of additional comments about that as well. So you want to move on to the next one? Yeah. So then finally, the open-ended response question toward the end was, based on your selection of priorities, would you like to share any ideas you have to make it happen? And I just went through, these were all open-ended, and just grouped them into 4 categories. People wanting to see us work on events and neighborhood gatherings, kind of in that line of, you know, general community building and relations between neighbors, fun events, etc. The second set of responses was something I just labeled structural change, things that seem to be, you know, bigger fundamental changes, looking at more diverse representation in the schools. And I assume here they're talking about maybe among the teaching faculty, I'm not sure. You know, looking at the racism potential in the police department and school system. One respondent wanted to bring the SRO back into our schools, and then others wanting to look at issues of affordable housing, access to social services, and public transportation. So kind of a whole range of things that had to do with kind of structural change. And then the 2 other categories were events celebrating diversity. So several people suggested something having to do with that. And then this last one, city coordinate info sharing and online newsletter, it was just one person, but they went kind of on at length about suggestions in regard to this, really specific ideas about, like, it would be great to have like a newsletter from the city with all these people contributing, so people were really truly informed. So that's that is how that landed up. But just to kind of summarize, I came new onto the committee in March of 2022, and was sort of trying myself to figure out what the committee was all about and what the main goals are. And what's interesting to me about this survey is that, you know, we gave them those 5 priorities that had been selected by the committee in 2021. But then since that time, it feels like we've had some feedback from community members, mostly at Public Speak, that their expectations of the committee are somewhat different. And so the question that I have sometimes is, well, we ask people to vote based on those 5 priorities, but, you know, what happened to the other 8 on that list of 13? And is it time to kind of maybe reframe a little bit and think, okay, well, based on where we are now, what should our priorities be? Because, you know, things have changed since 2018, and we've gone through a lot, and trying to figure out, you know, where are we now? So.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Thanks. So, yeah, so what we feel, at least some of us feel, like our next step should be to possibly identify, re-identify, or refine our strategy in order to help us regain traction and really understand our next best next steps. We also believe that new members should be recruited only after our goal, mission, and our strategy are clear again. Mission needs to be specific so that the work around the mission is comprehensible and members can feel a sense of efficacy and purpose. I'd also say, like, my personal opinion is that the process can be approved. Like, I know we can't change the open meeting law, but I think I can become a more, directive or proactive facilitator. You know, I've been a co-chair all along, and you know, it hasn't always, you know, I haven't had the independence to do things quite because I wanted to get feedback from the co-chair, or I would also actually reorganize our minutes so that, you know, or our agenda so that it has to include next steps and action steps before we adjourn. You know, like that's how it has to be, rather than talking a lot and not coming up with the real action steps. So those are just some thoughts, but we did invite you here, Chappelle, because we do have some specific questions, but we'd also welcome any feedback to anything you just heard. These were some things we wanted to ask you. And as Marla said, there were 8 additional priorities that were not chosen by the members at the time that are still in the strategic plan, which we can show you if you want us to show you. But yeah, so we also wanted to know about any administrative support, if that was possible. And
Okay, do you want me to just start with the questions on the slide?
Yeah, and also I'm aware that we're throwing these at you now. Like, you may want to take some time to think about it. You can always come back to us later, but yeah.
I can certainly provide information. So about what the state needs at this time in the near future, it's funny, I kept thinking about, thank you, the slide sheet and these efforts are great. Is, you know, where I've come about the purpose of CRC and so many things in the city is more about shifting from anecdotes to hard data that goes beyond like basic data points, right? Like this is how many people live in, you know, we're looking at census tracts or something like that. And so that jumps forward for me. We do have, as a part of the mayor pledge coming online, the new incident command system, and that's the software for dispatch and police response. That gives a lot more, basically it gives a lot more information. It is very forward facing. So we're slow to do that because of our IT infrastructure was so older than we thought. So we're there. Training has begun, and around data and whatnot. We just awarded a planning grant, community-based planning grant to Rivera Consulting. And once that scope is signed, I'm happy to push that description of what they're going to be doing. A lot of what they're talking about, it's aligned. It takes on what the city has invested in and spent in past year since 2017 across the city, and then look at priorities in grants, equity gaps and whatnot. It's really very comprehensive to help us get ready for the next 5 years of grants around community building, but also infrastructure, right? And then, so that, additionally, we applied for and got a grant for around the mills, and looking how to make, you know, looking at inequities there, how to access the public property and also the neighborhood across from the mills, Pleasant Green, which is one of the most diverse in the city. And that we just got that grant. and from mass development, and it will probably take a couple of months to actually get they assign us a consultant to do that planning work and data. And then on my data trend, I'm working with Robin Bielecki over at the Easthampton Community Center to do a new needs assessment and kind of a path forward. So the city is going to underwrite that for Robin and her board, to have some data and direction. Really interesting things happening over at Easthampton Community Center, especially with COVID, and certainly Robin and Val are interested, as is in the board, of what that looks like, when you look at it and I objectively, and not just historically. So a possibility or timeline for the administrative support of the committee. I would say in its size right now, I mean, there's still $9,000 in an account for the CRC, a little bit over, and that is for administrative support. The timeline to actually staff, I would want, I think the realignment or resurveying of folks around these priorities would be important. And I think that work, there's some overlap with other surveys we're going to do with these planning grants.
Right. Right.
To connect the CRC to the especially the Rivera Consulting Plan that I forget what the name of it is. But I think a lot of the things that you're bringing up in this and your work are questions that you can kind of see thread through our service with them. So the renewing, undoing racism. We got really poor response for that. I think the last time we put it out and then we went for follow-up dates from September, only 2 people signed up, and that was myself and Connie Denham. So I take that as a silent message from the community. So at this point, that's on permanent hiatus for doing. We did, as far as undoing racism, we have been doing follow-ups with the leadership group about the tools that we learned. But and I say leadership, like the city's leadership that went through it. But we're not doing any more formal training with undoing racism, the group.
Okay.
May I ask a question at this point? Because I'm wondering actually how to improve communications, maybe between yourself and your office and this group. So let me just say, and maybe you can correct any of my misperceptions, but I personally attended an Undoing Racism, and there was going to be 3 debriefs or 3 follow-ups, and I was able to attend the first one. I think the second one might have conflicted with our meeting. And then I actually showed up at city offices for the third one to be told, oh, it had been scheduled and you didn't know. No, nobody told me. And so if that got scheduled again, I just don't even know. So I feel like there's a disconnect where if there have been further follow-ups, and if those were follow-ups, and by the way, I had signed up for follow-ups to, there was an sign up. So if there were further ones, I mean, I don't know whether I know about all of the follow-ups or not. I get into this place where I feel like, and I do feel like, staff, I mean, sometimes I ask Lindsay and she feels like she included us, but I think that sometimes she really doesn't. And maybe because maybe I'm guessing, but we're not really city staff in the same way as other staff. So I don't know if we get I don't know. I'm just guessing, but I feel like somehow, and I even feel like even part of community relations is how do we improve communication? And I have sometimes remarked that, I feel like our committee is having communication disconnects. So how I would love to, I'd love input how to improve that, or maybe even whether we should schedule more meetings with yourself, because maybe we can find things out from you directly. But I just feel like there's a disconnect. Anyway, if you have more information, please go ahead.
Yeah. I agree with the disconnect. And it's, I always say the CRC is reflective of where we are as a whole community, and the disconnect with communication really, really worsened over COVID. And we haven't, and I say we, the city administration hasn't figured it out. It's still very piecemeal and whatnot of how best to get the word out. We have a great text service that will update you on anything you want in the city. And we're having, more people are signing up for it, and you can pick and choose. But, looking for a more holistic way to communicate in these days is not something we've spent a lot of time on the city side. And, the inconsistent or disconnection of communication between my office and the committee doesn't surprise me. It's something that comes up over and over again, and we're trying to fix it or figure it out. And one of the things that I don't want to jump too much, but at some point I wrote down the point, or in the survey, about how the city works, and how the city works. And in that engagement process, figuring out how the city wants to communicate. Connie Denham, the city councilor, has been looking into doing a formal municipal academy. I did a couple of them when I first got elected. But you talk about progress, you talk about next steps or whatnot, and Connie's looking, there are facilitators who do it. When I did it, out of my office, it was volunteers, and it was, it was very interactive, graphic organized, and there are different curriculums. Like some communities have a resident academy that literally goes like once every week for 10 weeks, and you get a certificate, and others are, 2 hours here, 2 hours there, or whatnot. There's a bazillion different ways to do it. And I know Connie would like help on it. But I just think, if nothing else, what you guys have here, I would, it would be great for Connie to walk through what you've collected, and the barriers and whatnot. So that comes up, and there's separate funding for resident academy. I say resident academy, it doesn't have to be that, but as far as how, like, we get a lot of requests around open meeting law, and people go through the training with the state, and okay, so the definitions, but there's not a lot of application, so if you do a work session or whatnot, the conversations are structured that you would like to see in your meeting. Maybe they are okay under open meeting law, if we got an expert and looked at it. That is out there. So the police liaison officer, she actually has left the force.
Okay.
And kind of off of a retirement, but also an injury at the same time.
Okay.
I will have to find out who the new liaison is. I thought I've got to check before.
Okay. Okay. Well, that explains
yeah.
what you
New.
Yeah. I have one more slide which just shows some parking lot things, but we don't. These are ideas that we were going to work on, or possibly work on. Ideas that we'd had. I think we may need to again, like, solidify our strategies and see which ones of these fit. But One that I'd already started talking to Jeff Mastriani at Easthampton Media about was the Notify Me feature, making a little video. Yeah, he and I just need to start making it. And I don't think that would be outside of any of our strategies. And then another idea we had was interviewing committee chairs or members and then asking them, I have the specific questions, what is your committee about? What's your biggest challenge? And then, do you have any openings? What can you tell anyone who might be interested in your committee? We could also always do, an anti-racism or other type of, serious discrimination issue that might be written about in a book and collaborate with the library on that.
Right.
The neighborhood parties, we thought was a good idea, but it does require more work, and some of our members are busy and we work, so we hadn't been able to enact that yet. So anyway, there's some other stuff. So yeah.
So
Could
like
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead. No, I'll ask after.
So like when I'm looking at like the neighborhood parties and interviews and whatnot, a lot of that is incorporated into this new project that we just awarded, neighborhood parties, neighborhood identification. I mean, and that was like back with the original Spirit report, as well as Dr. Campbell's, is you have to, or a strong recommendation to, in a positive light, define neighborhoods, right? In neighborhoods, and recognize and promote pride. And I see it comes up over and over again here, and that, but the work around like a book club in collaboration with the library or whatnot, I mean, we've done other simple things like that. And when you're talking about staff support or whatnot, I mean, that's a pretty minimum.
Right.
That's something that we could do, and our technology and like meetings online and book clubs or whatnot, and with the library, but the library is really good at that. And now we have an IT department, which we didn't have. The outreach, I think that the inviting others is the roll of the dice, but the send to go to other committee meetings for public speak and just say, hey, we're here or whatnot, I think is super effective. And then review of complaints against the police have been rejected. I don't know the date of that, but I feel pretty confident that those complaints have all, by law, have all been given to the Post Commission, and they review them independently. One of the things in my notes was also with this committee, what does the Post Commission do to its mission or around, complaints and whatnot, and what this committee's relationship would be to the Post Committee, because I know they have citizen outreach or resident outreach. And Post is basically policing. It's basically the revisioning of policing in Massachusetts on a state level, and it's a separate commission. So all the internal investigations go to the Post, all the police complaints, the data, all of the who's hired when, trainings they have, what don't they have, that sort of thing is held by the Post Commission. And it wasn't really a topic, it was kind of a theory in air when we were doing the beginning of this work and subsequently. So one of the notes I have is, what is the relationship, or would it make sense to get a hold of training or even like a video webinar for the members on this group, and we can promote it throughout the city to listen to what the Post is, and kind of walk it through.
Right. Okay.
Really helpful.
Okay.
All right.
Kind of on that note, was where my question enters in, which I brought up to the committee before, but just wondering how, because in my, again, recent entry into the committee and thinking about those 13 objectives and what is on that list that didn't make it to the top 5, and thinking about some towns in our areas, as I'm sure you're well aware, have, gone as far as, having more of a human rights commission. And it seems like some of the objectives are sort of dancing around that idea as a human rights commission, but it's never really been absorbed or accepted or adopted by this committee, which may, that may be perfectly fine. But I just wondered what your thoughts were on whether, because I guess one thing I wonder is, looking at all the different objectives, is one thing that kind of diffuses our energy is to have, like neighborhood parties and also, something much more serious like, police relationships. And so, who are we in that sense? And I wonder what your thoughts were about sort of the function of a group like this as evolving to be more of, does the city need a human rights commission? I guess this is my basic question. And, not that we would be that, but, if that is the basic need, and we've heard that sometimes, I think in public speak from some community members, that's what they think we should be doing, but we're not set up to do it. And so, what does that mean for us going forward? Is there a need for that in Easthampton? And, what would that look like? I don't know.
Right.
A little big, but.
I mean, the resolution and ordinance that the police chief and I put forward is actually an ordinance, is language from the Department of Justice for a Human Rights Commission. And I purposely changed it, the name Human Rights Commission, to the Community Relations on the suggestion. Well, Department of Ed, the Department of Justice said, like, this is by the DOJ's definition or whatnot, a sample ordinance for a Human Rights Commission. Maybe that name isn't the best for Easthampton or not. And we went with the Community Relations Committee, but the language is the same. So like Des Moines, Iowa has a really interesting method or how they took the same ordinance and how they put it into, basically made it a cost center. So they have contracts with this ordinance. They have contracts with HUD, and I'm trying to think of what the other one was, to actually be hearing officers. So if there's a housing complaint, you would go to the CRC, and then HUD pays the commission for that work. So they have a budget. And wait, Des Moines, that was in Des Moines, Iowa. So the thing, I guess I don't know, struggle or wonder. I mean, I look at that the language, and it could do, I think you could do a more, whatever Human Rights Commission is to people who think we need them, or investigations. And I know this has been flammable back and forth about, what people think an investigation is or whatnot. There are ways that committees like this do them all over the country. But the teeth of it, like the actual actions or whatnot, isn't built at all into our charter. So certainly there can be a series of questions, and one, and very with definiteness, I went the route of better software police, and let's get a data center, and let's do Notify Me, and let's, we've doubled the Department of Public Health, because I'm thinking, what have we never had that can support what comes next with this committee or work like this? Because it's certainly not work, like you can't, I don't feel it's not work you can lead somebody to a trow and say, okay, look at what we built. That's kind of the approach I took consistently, was let's build a better infrastructure that can be used for this work. And I focused a lot on jobs and small business. And like right now it's housing. Like my desk is filled with housing, because as we went through undoing racism, and I was still working with National League of Cities on this issue, and with Dr. Campbell, our local rapid recovery plan. There were things that needed to be secure: housing, food, transportation, as we all know. And I was like, okay, I can build those things into a government because there are grants to do it and it's less controversial. You know, go to for a housing grant is seemingly benign, right? You know, and then putting in structures into that housing, and you know, we're starting to see that fruition. As far as, you know, the committee, I was pretty adamant in the beginning and continue to be, you know, hands off. As far as, I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent, but you know, I still take that position. I do think, I don't know if I'm jumping topics, the work that Marla brings up, the questioning of whatnot. I also think that the committee was the numbers were too big at a time where there was so much discord, but there were also so many things going on. Like it just seemed and it's still true, but the awareness of what, you know, was kind of rumbling in the back of my head became to a point, certainly on June 3rd. And now my awareness of continuing events like that, and that have always gone on through history, are, you know, strike me every day of something I wasn't aware of before. And that said, a smaller group of members, even in the beginning, might have been more helpful or productive, or could have, you know, I mean, 11, you can have working block groups, you know, it's like 11. I didn't think this at all years ago, but, you know, 11 is 2 more people than our city council. And, you know, so to go down in a number, and we did this actually with the Economic Development and Industry Council. I think it used to be like 11 or 13, and it was really a dormant kind of lumbering body. And the chair came, and we reduced it, I think, to 9 or 7. And Rebecca, you and I spoke about this. And it's an invigorated committee. And they do a lot more than they used to because of the size. And I don't think she's the chair now, but David Boyle, who's been on for a long time, and I were talking about the number, reducing the number meant a lot. It seemed more manageable conversations and work could be done in a committee with a smaller number, given the wide breadth of the scope of EDIC. And you know, I draw some comparisons to this this group. To schedule meetings and whatnot, and to keep the work, you know, vibrant. And I mean, with the work, just the slides that you showed today, I mean, it encapsulates so much history from such a turbulent time. I mean, you think about, we had the mayor's pledge, and we had that work group, and we had discovery, and through all of this, you guys were doing your work, and it kind of runs through, you know, even the surveys are small samples, but they rang with high confidence with me. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember when we were talking about this, and housing kind of was all through those recommendations. And, you know, and this police, you know, with the, you know, the trust in police was definitely there, or distrust in police were there, but there were all these other trust issues too around where people lived and whatnot. And I think, you know, Rich, I certainly want to connect that into the next step in master planning, because it's, you know, it's an important time. I mean, you know, if nothing else, the group is now the historian for, you know, racial beginning of racial evil in the world. I mean, it's a good snapshot of what happened and what didn't work and whatnot. And I actually talked to Derek the other day, a couple of days ago, and he's now in he actually lives here, in the Northeast, I guess, like he didn't live in his territory. And he said he would be more than willing to come and meet in person if you guys were meeting in person. And I told him, I was like, well, this is actually what's happening this week. And he was, he's like, well, great, sticking to it. And I explained the struggles and a little bit. And he's like, okay, I knew about those too, but if you've got a good, strong group that wants to keep working, then let's make sure that happens. I think Derek, I don't know how it's your work product. I think Derek should definitely see, and Dr. Campbell, even Nicole Hendricks, see that PowerPoint presentation. I don't like PowerPoint or Dex or whatever they call them.
Right.
Because it really is a historic, I mean, it kind of holds what the struggles were and the progress and where we go next. And I kind of have the other group that I think would be a good partner in this work and to talk was, one, you're connected to eMedia, but also to know what the LGBT Chamber of Commerce is doing in town. They just opened their office here, the Massachusetts Chamber, and their efforts around diversity, inclusion, looking at barriers in government, like that unconscious bias and trust or lack of trust between government and residents. Their focus is their focus is really anything. It's amazing what they do. But their approach is very holistic. Like, okay, where are you, Emily? Where are you with this business idea? What, okay, so do you need money, capital? Oh, you need daycare, you need whatever. It's interesting and it's a good team over there, but they've been a partner with the city around Blueprint Easthampton, but also working with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated members of the LGBTQI community and connecting them with entrepreneurs or starting their own business or so the work is really, it's just fascinating and it's connected to a lot of other like regional and a couple of statewide organizations and doing that work on the ground and whatnot. So when you talk about taking on the work and having time and whatnot, there are more organizations in Easthampton and around that are doing, like, actually do the work we're talking about.
Right.
And so it's not on the committee necessarily to, go get the permits to sign up and, who's buying the burgers and, veggie dogs and stuff like that.
Right.
And the other thing I wanted to mention to this group too, so, we have that barbecue with a cop or cops and they block off. So that's evolving next year to National Night Out.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Night Out?
Yeah, National Night Out.
National Night Out.
A lot of it's in August around the same time. It's been around. It's now its own organization. But what you're doing is it came from inner city. I think it came from inner city, like Detroit's and Chicago or whatnot, where it was very dangerous to walk on the streets at night. And the communities were like, enough, we're going to take our nights back and we're going to go out en masse in the night and say, no, these are our sidewalks too. And so now
that used to be the Take Back the Night.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yes, exactly. The women's movement. I was doing that when I was 20 years old. 15 years ago, Take Back the Night march.
In college.
And if you Google it, you'll see a lot of communities have evolved to that model, and it incorporates public health, fire, police, our co-responders, DPW. It's a real fun night, but also Learn to Cope is going to be partnering with us. They're a great new group in town, super well established around support for families dealing with addiction, opioid addiction. They're in Eastworks. They're amazing. Yeah. So the national, when we're talking about these events or these community things, we're trying to make them more like unsilo them. It's and the police are fully on board. They were great. We had a beginning meeting with a core group of city employees about like, okay, this is what it would look like, and we, is the barbecue still happening? And it's going to, and the police will continue to take that on, but there will also be other activities and groups and held by the whole city at night out in schools. So that's something else that's coming. We're starting to evolve.
Good.
But that said, I just to go back, as I'm saying all of this, like, this is not the best way to communicate it all out, right?
Right.
Six of us here,
Right.
and help on that. So the communication plan is, we're desperately needed, and that's just a really, that's a really hard plug to get into a budget of a city of 16,000, but it's so needed. I, put it on my bullet changes, but but I did just fund a part-time ARPA position to work on small business guides and our website to make it more logical and more communication flow. And maybe we could talk to Heather. She just started 3 days ago. She's taking on the small business guide right now. She's great. So I just to, I have a meeting at 7. Just to wrap, one big piece of business is I would like to put together a document and then give it to you guys around the membership, like the actual members of the CRC, and for your consideration of what you think about reducing it. And just thoughts about that. And if that would, I just my thoughts about that, and put a more formal proposal or piece of paper in front of you all as a committee around, that. And also considering, or there are a couple of different opportunities that the city needs to review, different proposals and changes and whatnot. And the CRC, I think members would be a good group of folks to pull from. So like right now we're doing this RFP proposal to redo the accounting system between schools and cities, so it's not such a battle. And so Megan Ward Harvey is on that. She's a school committee member, and she's, so we're trying to pull in people who are in the real part of what the product is before the RFP and the proposal is done. And we say here, so there's some nice stuff, and I definitely want, I don't know if I'll have that for that documentation, but those are the two things that I would want to go forward, and that I definitely want a copy of that deck. That's great.
Okay. I can send it to you. Yeah. But also happy. I mean, this is, unless the school committee's schedule is a little off now, so I didn't have one today, but I'm happy to come to the meeting and be a little more prepared and organized, and report back. I mean, this stuff is important to me. And Tuesdays at 6 are, I mean, there's, other than school committee every other week, like, this is a good time for me to show up or get direction from you guys of like, look, we need you to show up because of, or let's talk through, or you promised this. And Lindsay's good making me show up for those meetings and doing the work.
I have a question, Mayor. Did you get the email that I sent a copy to you that I had sent to the CRC? Did you get to see that? I sent it the Friday right before Thanksgiving or Thursday. And did you get to see it before this meeting? Okay.
I did.
So I guess we're definitely in progress, a process of a progress, not a progress, of a process to figure out what we're doing, because with the 4 members of our committee that now exist, 4 white women, I'm 71. I think we're in our 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I don't think that's a very good representation for what we'd have for a community relations committee, nor, and so I agree with you about not having 11 members. I thought that made a lot of sense, what you just said. However, our lack of people power, commitment, cohesiveness as a group, again, 4 years, and I still have almost told no one I'm on this committee, because we do nothing, and I'm embarrassed by that. And I'm ashamed, actually.
Yeah, I would disagree. Margaret, I think that the representation on this committee is a reflection of where we are as a city, and that the city needed to take and is taking more steps to build a structure for more folks who are in the community or want to be in the community, whether that's business, whether that's the housing needs study. I don't think it's all on the CRC.
No, it isn't on the C. I mean, I think we've worked really hard. I think we've tried really hard. I think that, even though people talk about conflict between members, I haven't really even seen that much conflict between members. Honestly, I think we've been fairly respectful of each other.
Well, let me say, it seems a little hard getting to yes. Just to
it's impossible to get to yes.
So, I mean,
I think it's because people don't have they don't have the time, and a lot of what the expectations have been are things that absolutely require staff, paid staff.
Yeah, and I think of the work that's done, that I think that the paid staff to a committee has been, I don't know, I've dispersed it to other departments who are happy to work with you guys and need the support of the community, not doing the work, like setting up the tables or whatnot, but getting input. And I do think that there's a reason why this committee is not really that different than any other committee in the city, regardless of its purpose. It's white, and it's women. Except for city council, which is a whole other discussion. That's the reality, of where we are, and how do we, not even make change. How do we make space for somebody else to find themselves, right? I think we're not even as a community, like even in a space to say, welcoming. I mean, when I saw the welcoming on that survey, it being number 3, I was thrilled. I was like, that's great. I mean, not to, I mean, but then also, Margaret, think about like that data point, right? Small sample, but that's the first real big data point we've gotten in a long time on this, because we had to wait so long on the police software, but also, we have a new census out now, and data aggregation is going to be super important, and we're starting to do that with different studies or whatnot, and putting off more anecdote stuff. And it seems a logical place, Margaret, to get you guys in on that. I do think, I mean, you've had really hard conversations, and again, if nothing else, you've memorialized what the last 4 years have been like in a city from a very, very specific perspective.
Well, I'm just thinking that here we are left with 4 white women, and Marla being new. So 3 older white women and Marla, and the people who have really been most significant in helping us have been 3 Black men. So, right?
Yeah.
And at one moment in time, we had like half and half, BIPOC, white, and
we have to think about that. I mean, I don't want to. Yeah, I mean, I've I think I'll speak for myself. Like, I'm a part of that. Like that, it's just like the city council and not having men. I mean, having not men, having women, right? I mean, I have to own that. I mean, that there's a reason for that, that clearly I don't understand, because I'm the person who signs off on the applications and not, so that's a really, I don't even sticky, that's kind of like a rock right here, realizing, to do so much work. I mean, this is, I grew up swimming in this stuff of privilege and whatnot. And to be a part of this group and do all this work and end up, Margaret, with, the 4 white women and where it never stops. All right, we're trying, we're doing the best we can, but, it's not the outcome we expected or wanted or whatnot. But, I am grateful and appreciate all of you for sticking with it, even Julie, who's listening. And, I don't want to give up, in the email you were talking about, like, just, I don't want to, if the committee were to become totally dormant and all of you stepped away, I would still want it on the books. And in the hope that the community going forward would find, it as a catalyst or an interest and rejuvenated it. And that has happened. I mean, we have committees that never met, and all of a sudden someone says, wait, we got to be talking about the aquifer, or this is a climate issue, and the people who have, the worst housing and whatnot have the worst water because of the infrastructure and stuff like that. So I have to jump. Speaking of housing, the housing coalition, we're making a plan. No, thank you.
Thank you so
and I'll
much.
get that letter out, and I'm happy to come back upon your invitation.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night. Okay.
Wow. That was I thought that the presentation that you all put together was just fabulous.
Yeah, good job, Emily.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah, really fabulous. Thank you. It was very helpful to me. It's like, right, yeah. Except I did notice the COVID. That was it. That was all of it, except like, and then I missed 4 meetings in a row or something like that, which I'd never done because they only were in person, which
That was the COVID thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That was another, like, pump on the COVID thing, and
Right.
So should we focus on next steps since we've got 15 minutes left? And
Yes.
I'm gonna have to jump off like right at 7:30.
I know that one of my next steps is to actually listen to the last 40 minutes of this meeting on Easthampton Media and write down and listen more carefully. Because the mayor mentioned a lot of things, but I didn't always catch it.
Would it be helpful if at this moment we kind of just went around and everybody kind of give their take of like, okay, like what's one important thing to do? Because I have a list of like 4 here.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea.
Conversation. So, yeah, do people want to do that?
Yeah, sure.
sure. Can you start? Will you start?
Sure, if you want to. Well, she was talking about this Rivera Consulting and the data collection they're going to be doing. And it feels like that would be, if we connected with them, connecting somehow with that data collection that's going on would give us an opportunity to, as I think she suggested, kind of resurvey what people think about, our mission, or we could put something in there that might pertain to what we're doing.
Yeah.
The second one I had was, I know some, she said she'd be happy to come to meetings, which would be great. But I know some committees also have city councilors who come. And I don't know if that's just voluntary or assigned, but some connection to the city council that's more direct feels like it could be useful. We'd be more informed about what's going on a broader scale.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Do you think we should extend an invitation to ask them to come to our meeting, or what do you think?
Well, let's think about it a little bit, but
Okay.
If I
I
can
mean, she
throw
was talking about connecting us with Connie on this municipal academy, which I don't understand what that is, but I mean, Connie is the one who actually comes to the committee that my partner's on. And I think it's just voluntary. I don't think she's like assigned or anything, but I don't know.
Right.
Right. Okay.
What's the next one that you have?
Well, I'll stop there for now. You guys go.
My yeah, go ahead. Well, my list is listen to the last 45 minutes of this tape again and take better notes. I certainly have to send this PowerPoint out to the mayor and Derek Dean. I don't know who Nicole Hendrick. I've heard her name many times.
She was the woman she's a professor at Holyoke Community College. She's really a fabulous. She's in the criminal justice department there, and she was our facilitator for the mayor's work group. Rebecca and I work with her for
Okay.
4 or 5 months. She's really excellent, and
Okay.
yeah. So she could also be helpful to us in some way as a consultant. I had great faith in her.
Okay.
and perhaps if you would send the PowerPoint to all of us.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Great.
I mean, Margaret and I would have in our emails Nicole Hendrick's email, but I mean, I can forward that to her.
Okay.
I reached out to her.
Well, when we figure out how we might want her or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
not just say, oh, look what we did. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what I was thinking is that on this meeting with Mayor LaChapelle, that didn't she suggest that few people that should have this? But I'll hold off until we feel like it's
No. I mean, yeah. I just think that when you send something out, it's like, is there something we'd like feedback from her or?
Right.
I think that collecting more data is really important. And, and I also think that the whole issue about whether it's being a community relations, not community relations committee, but a human rights commission or committee, which is totally, I understand what the mayor said, how she kind of changed our name to change our kind of function. But, and that's good because, we're not set up to do those kinds of investigations. But I'm just curious. So, how we access other people, I'm still stymied about a next step for me. What is the next step? I really don't know what I would want to ask of anybody. Seriously.
Well, it feels like there's so much going on that she talked about that sort of circles what our mission is, and it's going on in different ways in the city government. And so the fact that I personally didn't know about any of those things is a little bit of an issue when we're kind of spinning our wheels trying to figure out what to do. So certainly getting more contact with these other groups that she's talking about would be really important. So we know it's happening first, and then we can figure out, do we support them, in what they're already doing? Or, is there some piece and we say, okay, well, this is being covered by all these different units. So then there's this other piece that, is not being covered, and we could do that.
So, for example, would you say that what the mayor talked about in terms of any police or fire department or municipality kind of complaints goes to this? What was the name of the
post commission? The post commission.
So that, or that, for example, and Derek talked about this too, that some human rights commissions hook up with like HUD, and they get payment, and they have a contract with HUD to review discrimination in housing complaints, and they get, those kinds of things. So, is that where we go, for example, or do we, she just laid out, sometimes I think the mayor has a really broad picture, and she gets a lot done. There's been a lot going on in Easthampton over the last several years, lots and lots of money coming in, and projects and housing development and et cetera. And we are like on one level. I mean, she's respectful and I don't ever feel unrespected, but we're like just a little blip on the screen. That's kind of, in a very busy city and a very busy agenda and a lot of bigger problems, like, I don't know if you read about what's going on in the city council. It's not a group you'd want to be a member of.
I think they need a little community relations, don't you?
I know.
Yeah,
There's some problems there. And, exactly. Just,
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think we have a clear sense of that yet, but getting a sense of, okay, like, what is the post commission doing? And how do other community relations committees and other places relate to it?
Right.
Is that being covered already in our city, or is it something?
Right. Well, and that's one of the things that Derek really went through with us very painstakingly about, what function do you want to take on? Are you going to be, I can't even remember the categories, but there were like 3 different major categories. You could either serve this kind of function, an investigative function, for example, an educational function, and
there's facilitator, there was advisory, and then the other one might have been more investigation, right?
Okay, maybe facilitate things, advisory, and or investigative. So those are like the 3 major functions that there are for people like us.
And our majority thought we would facilitate, but so if we're still asking the questions, I guess for me, I just really think outreach in a number of ways that's on my list, because I feel like if we can get to know, if we can start to at least touch base with other organizations, get to know who they are, what they do. There are some groups in town that are not subject to open meeting law. And if we collaborated on an event, and if we got good at being facilitators, let's say, and could cause some things to happen, but some of the volunteers would even be in these other groups who are not subject to open meeting law. I just feel like there are a lot of possibilities. When I was looking at or attending different events and seeing the co-sponsorship list, I see that some things really come out from collaboration. So somehow I feel like outreach, I know that we're not necessarily saying we have a lot to offer you, but Mayor just said, well, what if, if it's a city committee, what if we attend public speak, mention who we are? What if one of us, or what if I went to city council's public speak and said, hello, we'd like to collaborate with you, and would you consider appointing a liaison? But a concern, at least like I've been raising, is the communication that there's things to know that we haven't known. There's things the mayor's been doing that we haven't known. When she first was setting up the Undoing Racism, we felt like we didn't know enough about that. The first one was in August. I think we really didn't know about that one.
No, we didn't. No. And then we went to the October one, and I don't think there was that one since then.
Right.
2021.
Right. She hoped to have further one, but she just told us that it's on a permanent hiatus because I think Emily, you wanted to go to that one, but she said there was like 2 signups or something.
I know. I hadn't signed up yet.
And she was one of them. No, the mayor was one of them. I think that's a whole kettle of fish in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right? Racism trainings and whatever. The vote of kind of quote, no confidence by no one going. I'm not sure what that's about. It's not a great thing. I'm surprised that a lot of people in the community didn't go.
But
but I think it's not advertised.
Yeah. What if somehow, there's communication, and then there's maybe if we little by little, I think it's a big job, but we have a list of groups, and if little by little we did outreach and had collaborators, and then if there was an undoing racism and we could call in all the collaborators, right, and let them know here's the sign-ups.
Let's be more organized. I agree
And
with
I
you.
think that's if we quote have forums, and there are people too who are local and native, and I think if there was any conflict that I experienced was the notion that people that we might want to facilitate, that they would make money, that we would pay them. We might pay them $1,000, we might pay them $2,000, whatever. That was an issue about paying people to do that kind of facilitation. I don't know if we still have that conflict. I don't think we do. But I don't know what Marla thinks about paying facilitators versus getting, doing it ourselves or having it be very homegrown.
Yeah, I think
That's what I think.
It's expensive. It's expensive.
And we have money. I mean, we've had $10,000 or $15,000 a year, and if we even created a budget,
that's not a bad idea.
We could have more money than that. So it's not like that money isn't there.
I'm sorry, folks.
We
We
don't
don't have to go. I'm sorry.
Yes.
This is great.
So tell me about what's happening the 8th. I don't know that I can make. Is that a meeting that Derek is going to be at?
Derek Dean is planning on attending. He is willing to come out here. I just haven't heard from him whether he will, when he would come. So that's the only, he didn't want
And he doesn't want to meet on Zoom?
He's willing to do that.
Well, I mean, I had looked into at least having it be.
Sorry.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Marla.
Thank you.
So I at least did some looking into about a hybrid meeting. I mean, if Derek wants to come in person, I think that'd be great. I understand that not everybody still wants to do an in-person meeting. You might want a hybrid. Yeah.
Right. Well, no. I'm going to the Galaxy tomorrow night for dinner.
Oh.
Well, and Derek mentioned like dinner.
He wants to go to Galaxy too?
Yeah, he does. So
I think the next time we meet with Derek, we need to meet in a restaurant.
Yeah.
So how early does the Galaxy do dinner? I have to say I haven't gone there. I have other favorite haunts, but
5.
5? If Derek's looking for an early dinner, what about 5 at the Galaxy?
Okay, I'll ask him that.
And then we would have to see if we're going to then talk business, that's a notice public meeting.
Right, exactly. Well, I guess we're going to be we'd want to talk business with him.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's
wait. Okay, yeah. Okay, so the 8th is Thursday. The 8th of December is a Thursday.
Correct.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's when he's available.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But is that to meet in any form or come in person, or we don't know?
Well, so what I have done is reserved the conference room number 1 for 6 o'clock on the 8th. Okay. I had already reserved that. And, once I was hearing about his schedule, I just wanted to know more. But if it's up to me to propose it, then I would seriously propose something like 5 o'clock at the Galaxy or something fairly early at a venue that can do it.
Okay.
And then with our 6 o'clock meeting, I feel like, an hour to have to then be at the meeting, that's a little short. So I don't know.
Okay, so question I have though, is Derek aware that the 3 of us and probably Marla will be the people who are there?
Yes.
And that have we had any resignations from Jan or Myra?
I am not aware of any resignations.
Because Emily, I just noted, I thought when you sent out your thing last night, it was just to the 4 of us. It wasn't.
I know. I forgot to copy them.
Yeah.
I totally.
Well, it's hard to know that they're on the committee. So.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that we don't necessarily need clarification on that. They are just absent members, and so they just are.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
And we've told them, I mean, they know how, I feel like they know how to resign. So, and that's nothing that we can do for them. That's up to
No.
them.
Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
Okay. So, all right. Well, so do we have to confirm the meeting with Derek? I'd hate to have him kind of schlep out here to go out to dinner with us. I mean, if he'd like to, that's fine, but that's what it feels like.
I know. He
I mean,
said,
I'd like to do that. I really like him, and I would like to have
Right.
a little, whatever, the juice off of that. But,
Right.
hour and a half, 2 hours each way in the dark, for what? For 2 hours?
I know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the
If he had other business here, I would, I'd jump on that bandwagon. But
Right. Right.
well, the
Right.
truth is right now, I think, Emily, you said that Derek mentioned either lunch or an early supper.
Mhm.
And the truth is that when I look at the calendar, the city calendar, I don't see any other meetings besides ours. It makes me think if I know what I'm doing, like if we want an earlier meeting or,
Mhm.
then maybe I can change the time.
Mhm. Right.
but could you meet on Thursday, the 8th, Emily, in the daytime?
Yeah, I can just put in for annual leave. And yeah, I can just do that. I typically have a group at 1, but I do have a co-facilitator, so I could skip that. I can just put in for annual leave. So maybe we should do a late lunch and then a public meeting after that. Like lunch at 1 and public meeting at 3 or 2:30. You think?
I didn't get to ask Marla her schedule, but
I know. Yeah, we need to ask Marla. And then the mayor might want to join us. Like she was not available the night of the 8th. I don't, maybe she's out of town that entire day. I don't know. But
Well, she may have other meetings or other whatevers, but
right.
what? Yeah. So the 8th is his time. So I don't know. It seems like we haven't settled on what we're going to do about the 8th. If we're going to cancel it,
Mm-hmm.
I think he needs to be talked to again, and it might be better for him to do a Zoom. And I don't know, do a Zoom earlier in the day. I don't care. I mean, I do care. I have a bunch of things scheduled that day, so I don't know, but
So do you want me to inquire and do his, I mean, it sounded like he was free from lunch on, but I just didn't hear how willing he was to drive back, like how late he was willing to drive back. So,
and also if Marla's available.
Right. I know she's available in the evening, but I didn't ask her for during the day. So, yeah.
Do you think it's worth a phone call to Derek Dean? Do you want me to do that, or do you have time to do
that? Yeah, I mean, I do have to run out and get dinner food for myself right now. So I wouldn't be able to do it until during work hours tomorrow. So if you wanted to.
I could give him a call and see what he's thinking about his life that day and what he meant.
Okay.
And also that we feel like, I put, like I said, for him to drive for 4 hours to meet with us for 2 hours, and we're kind of going, we don't know what we're doing. I mean, I just.
Right. I know. It feels, I know. So yeah. So let's, if you want to give him a call, Rebecca, that would be awesome.
Sure.
We can talk to each other about this, I think, anytime, because this is a scheduling issue.
That's right. We can discuss scheduling.
Just pick up the phone and just talk to each other. And I think I have.
We could even do a conference call about scheduling an agenda.
Okay. Right. And you know what? Yes, I know I have Rebecca's phone number. Emily, would you just give me your phone number?
Well, maybe not online. What if we email it to you?
Why don't you email it to me?
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm trying to take, Myra was teaching me to kind of shut up about personal stuff on the recording. So I need you, Myra. But anyway.
All right. Yeah. So we're adjourning. I move that we adjourn.
Okay. I'll second that. And we'll be in
Okay.
touch. We'll be in touch about
The 8th
yeah.
or what? The 8th or what?
Okay, all in favor? Emily?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Margaret?
I'm in favor.
And me, because we're online. I mean, they say online we have to yes, yes, and yes.
Right.
Because they don't even see our hands.
Right.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, thank you.
Meeting is adjourned. Okay.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye-bye.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.